In the bruised and bleeding dawn that followed the very last thunderclap of the Titanomachy, the heavens themselves were scarred with white fissures that wept molten light for 40 days and 40 nights without cease. The earth lay cracked open like a broken skull beneath the weight of toppled golden palaces, whose adamantine columns had melted into rivers of glowing slag that hissed and steamed across the plains of Thessaly, turning entire forests into rivers of glass. The seas themselves boiled, sending up columns of steam that blotted out the stars and swallowed the moon, while the mountains vomited fire and ash in sympathy. The four great pillars that hold apart sky and soil groaned with the sound of bronze about to snap. The rivers ran backward, and the winds howled with the voices of the dying titans, whose final screams still echoed inside the hollow bones of the world. Gaia, the oldest mother of all, the wide-bosomed earth, had birthed first the star-crowned sky Uranus, and then the restless sea Pontus, and finally the 12 radiant titans from her own limitless flesh. She had felt every individual thunderbolt of Zeus as it slammed into the bodies of her children and drove them screaming into the abyss. She had listened to the separate, unmistakable cries of Cronus, Iapetus, Hyperion, and the others, as one by one they were seized by the throat and hurled downward into the lightless pit of Tartarus that lies beneath her own roots. She had tasted the salt of her own tears mingling with the golden ichor of her dying grandchildren as Zeus's lightning carved new canyons across her back and turned forests to glass and rivers to blood. Gaia woke at last from the stunned, grieving sleep that had lasted since the day her youngest grandson seized the throne of heaven. Something inside her, older than sorrow and deeper than Tartarus itself, finally snapped. It was a rage colder than the void before creation, hotter than the heart of a newborn star, deeper than the trench where Oceanus himself fears to swim, older than the first word ever spoken in the dark. Her children, her beautiful, terrible, golden children, who had once ruled the universe in perfect and eternal splendor, were now chained forever beneath her own skin, feeling every footstep of mortal and immortal alike as torture. The boy she had once hidden in the Dictaean cave on Crete, the boy she had once loved as her own hope, now sat laughing on a throne that by right belonged to them, now ruled the sky that had once been her husband Uranus, now wielded the very thunderbolt she herself had forged in her agony to free her first children from their father's belly. And so Gaia, the mother of everything that is or ever was or ever will be, the one whose dreams are the slow rising of mountain ranges, whose tears are the birth of rivers, whose breath is the wind that carries the seeds of all life, and whose rage is the earthquake that swallows cities whole and spits out only silence, opened her womb one final, apocalyptic time. She brought forth the most terrible army the cosmos has ever known, an army that threatened to collapse existence back into the primordial void. The giants, Gigantes, were born fully armed and fully grown from her fury, and the last black drops of Uranus's blood that still soaked the soil of the peninsula of Pallene in Thrace, where the final battle for the sovereignty of existence itself would be fought. Each giant was taller than the highest peak of Olympus, stacked upon itself 100 times over. Each was shaped like a living cataclysm that had learned to walk. Their lower bodies were not legs, but coiling, hissing, fire-spitting serpent-dragon tails, whose venom could dissolve bronze and marble and flesh, and even the invisible air itself into screaming nothingness. Their arms were thick as thousand-year-old oaks that had drunk deep of Titan blood for centuries. Their faces were beautiful and terrible, like the faces of gods, but twisted with the agony of their birth and the hatred of their mother and the memory of every wrong ever done to the children of earth. Their hair was living storms of darkness, fire, and lightning that lashed the sky. Their eyes were molten lava that could burn holes straight through mountains and gods alike. Their voices were earthquakes that split continents and swallowed armies whole. Their footsteps were tsunamis that drowned entire coastlines and changed the maps of the world forever. Leading them were the most formidable, Porphyrion, the king of the giants, whose head brushed the vault of heaven and whose desire for Hera was a lust that could crack the moon in half. Alcyoneus, the immortal whose flesh could not be pierced so long as even one toe touched the earth that was his mother, and who grew stronger with every wound. Enceladus, who tore up mountains the way a child pulls weeds, and would one day lie buried beneath Sicily, still breathing fire through the crater of Etna that erupts to this very day. Mimas, who would be crushed beneath the island of Ischia and whose dying breath still causes earthquakes in the Bay of Naples. Pallas, whose flayed skin would become the dread aegis of Athena. Ephialtes, who planned to stack Pelion on Ossa on Olympus itself to climb to the throne of Zeus. Polybotes, who pursued Poseidon across the wine-dark sea until the god tore off a fragment of Kos and crushed him beneath it, creating the island of Nisseros that still steams with his rage. Hippolytus, Gratian, Agrius, Thoas, and Clytius, who burned like living torches and set the very oceans ablaze. Eurytus, who wielded a club of white-hot iron forged in the heart of the earth. Damisos, the fastest of all giants who could outrun the north wind itself, and 1,000 more whose names are still carved in terror on the rocks of Phlegra, and whose bones still lie buried beneath the plains where the blood of gods and giants mingled and fertilized the soil so that wheat grows. Taller there than anywhere else in Greece, and wine tastes faintly of lightning and vengeance. Gaia armed them with entire mountain ranges torn from the roots of the earth, and gave them a prophecy whispered in the voice of the oracle itself that no god could silence. The giants cannot be defeated by gods alone. Only if a mortal fights beside the Olympians can the children of earth be brought low, and so the forgotten war began, the war that almost ended Olympus forever. The war where mountains walked and rivers of divine ichor soaked the plains until they became red seas. The sky itself cracked open with the screams of dying immortals and the laughter of a mother who would see her grandson torn limb from limb by her new and terrible children. The war lasted 1,000 days and 1,000 nights, without sun or moon, because the sky was blotted out by the wings of storm giants, and the smoke of burning earth, and the dust of collapsing continents. The war shook the pillars that hold heaven and earth apart until they nearly snapped. The war that almost ended everything, the forgotten war where mountains walked and Zeus fought giants taller than Olympus itself. This is how close he came to losing everything. And somewhere far beneath the earth, something older than rage stirred again, patiently, endlessly waiting because the war was over. But the silence that followed was worse.